I have tested more than 100 different lenses in the last 8 years, and I currently own 31 different lenses for my various camera systems. Every lens really has its own look, and honestly, lenses are just tools to solve different creative jobs depending on what look you're trying to achieve. But when it comes to creating YouTube videos, just like this one, there are only a handful of lenses that I find myself reaching for time and time again. And if I had to start over completely from scratch, so I have no lenses, maybe I just have one basic camera body, and I was on a really limited budget, this little $400 lens would be my first lens purchase. Let's talk about it.
You gotta just press record.
Hi everyone, Craig Pruitt with Think Media. This is the Sigma 16mm f1.4 lens that was released almost 7 years ago. We've been using this lens at Think Media for years. We've featured it in many camera builds, YouTube videos, etc. And if you've watched Think Media for any length of time, there's a high likelihood that you've watched a video from us where we shot the entire video on this Sigma 16mm lens, and maybe you just didn't know it. And I'm also using the lens right now to record this talking head video. There are so many reasons we like this lens, but there are 3 things I want to cover in today's video as to why this is the one lens that every YouTuber should buy. Those 3 reasons are affordability, usability, and image quality. And we're going to break down those categories a little bit more in depth. Starting with affordability, at the time of recording this video, this lens is on sale for $399. And for context, when this lens was first launched, it was priced at $450 and usually sits right around that same price range. So it really hasn't gone up in price in 7 years. So everything else in the world has gone up in price. Even wages have gone up and price for camera gear has gone up. The entry level price for a lot of these cheaper camera bodies and lenses has risen over time. But this lens is even more valuable than it was 7 years ago because it's maintained its price point. So overall, when you just consider the price to performance ratio of this lens, and we're going to get into the performance a little bit more, this lens just offers really good performance at a very low price point. The next reason that this lens is so great for YouTube is its usability. It is such a practical lens to use for many scenarios that a YouTuber would find themselves in. This of course starts with the focal length of 16mm. Now, 16mm on an APS-C sensor would act more like a 24mm lens would on a full frame camera. So just keep that in mind. It's actually going to be a little bit tighter than you would think if you're shooting on an APS-C camera than you would on a full frame camera. This just has to do with the way lenses act with the different sensor sizes of a smaller APS-C sensor and a larger full frame sensor. You get a different field of view depending on what lens you put on your camera. But the 16mm focal length on an APS-C camera is a great focal length for a variety of scenarios, from wide angle views when you are vlogging to studio setups like I am right now, to even tighter shots for capturing B-roll and tutorials. The 16mm focal length on APS-C is a great range. This lens is also so usable because you can mount this to basically every camera mount that is sort of in production today, starting with the Sony E mount, which is what I'm using right now. But this lens is also available for Nikon Z, Micro Four Thirds mounts, Canon EF and M mounts, Fuji X and Leica mounts, and even coming soon, pre-orders are live right now on B&H for the Canon RF mount. So for me, it's encouraging that this lens is so sought after that there is even a market for this lens for even some of the newest camera mounts coming on the market, like the Canon RF mount. So if you own some of the Canon R series cameras like the Canon R50 or the R10, don't worry, you will soon have access to this lens as well. Plus, this lens is just way more applicable in 2024 because there are so many more high quality APS-C size cameras today than there were back in 2017. All of the different camera manufacturers are making high quality APS-C cameras with really good autofocus. So when you pair this lens with some of these newer cameras like the ZV-E10 Mark I or II that just got released, or the Nikon Z30, or soon to be some of these Canon R series cameras, this lens really does not disappoint. The autofocus performance is really good, and overall, this lens is just really usable. And finally, I just want to talk about the image quality of this lens because the image quality is really, really good for the money. As you can tell, I've been showing you footage shot with this lens throughout the video, and I'm going to show you some more samples here on the screen of when I was out with my family just doing some vlog tests, as well as more stuff in my YouTube studio, shooting B-roll of different cameras and lenses. The Sigma 16mm just looks really beautiful and provides with a really solid image straight out of camera. This is also an outstanding photography lens, and I know that if you are a YouTuber, one of the things you always got to think about is thumbnails, and a lot of times you have to take stills for your thumbnail needs, and this lens certainly does not disappoint when it comes time to take your stills. I think the only con for this lens would be that there is no optical image stabilization. So if your camera doesn't have sensor stabilization, you might have some issues when you're trying to use this lens as a walk around vlog lens. And if you're really shaking the camera a whole lot, it's going to be a little bit more difficult to stabilize because the lens does not have built-in stabilization to it. You're going to get a little bit of shaky footage. But if your camera does have good stabilization, this is not something you're going to have to really worry about at all. So why does every YouTuber need this lens? Well, in my opinion, this lens is at the perfect intersection of affordability, usability, and image quality. It meets all three of these criteria really, really well, and the price to performance ratio of this lens is just unmatched. This is the perfect lens to purchase, especially if you already have purchased a kit lens in your camera and you have something that's a little bit more of a focal range, like a 16 to 50 kit lens or something, but you really are ready to seriously improve the image quality of your videos, then the Sigma 16mm f1.4 lens is a very natural next step, and you're gonna be blown away with how good the image looks once you upgrade from your kit lens. Now, if you're a budget-minded content creator just like I am, you're gonna wanna click or tap the screen right here to check out our studio build that we did of an entire YouTube studio that cost under $1,000. It's such a cool video, so be sure to check that out right here, and we'll see you in the next one.